why don't we go to, since Daniel's group got cut off, why don't we go to them to sort of share out their conversations so that we're in the know about what they talked about.
So I can certainly share out, but I'm going to ask someone from my group if they want to share out some of the feedback. That would be great. Looking at Jocelyn, Markia, Mr. Patton was in our group.
I can share. Good morning, everybody. I'm Markia Davis. I work in the Brandywine School District as the supervisor of equity and culture. In our group, we were talking about prioritizing the well-being of our teachers as well as our students right now, with all that we have been going through with transitions from COVID and back to school, the inconvenience perhaps of mask wearing and the impact of that with building relationships and community. I think that we do need to help prioritize as well the professional learning for educators to become more trauma informed and understanding how to engage the development of the social and emotional learning of our students, especially, during this time. There's like when you go into schools and talk to educators, our children are dysregulated from lack of structure, transitions back to school, just so many things. So I think that those things need to be a priority. We also talked about the idea of prioritizing additional professional development time and just looking at the structure of how we do that. I think Mr. Patton had mentioned the idea of he visited another district and they have a day that they spend each week on professional development. And so thinking about that, as well as talking with Jocelyn, how about, the opportunity to partner with our organizations in the community. And so while teachers are engaged in professional development, we partner with our organizations to provide services with some consistency for our students as well, that would encourage more social and emotional learning, and perhaps help to catch up with their academic achievement as well.
Wonderful. Anyone else from that group want to share out? Thank you so much, Markia, for that.
So I think Markia covered a lot of what we talked about. One thing I will also add, she hit on it. She hit on it a little bit about really being intentional around how we use our time. There were some themes throughout the conversation about just the overall structure of the day, yes, but of the whole year. How are we thinking about moving through education? How do we use the first 2 weeks? How do we use, the first month, the first 6 months, the first year of a child's education? So really getting strategic around how we are thinking about utilizing school days and the whole year across the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. So I want to say thanks to my group for participating. You all were great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's always interesting when different groups talk about similar topics, because our small group as well dug into how to use the school day particularly, and the early mornings, or should we not do early mornings? So let's go to maybe our group. So we had Dr. Bakir, we had Carolyn Deal, and you disappeared on my screen, Chelsea Fisher as well. So we had a really good conversation about a number of topics. I think the 3 top ones or 4 top ones, and then I want each member of our group to kind of quickly share one piece of it. We talked about field trips and engaging experiences outside the classroom. We talked about the high school component of this and talking about the need for high school seats for children closer to where they live. We talked about violence in the community and that impact on children. And then we talked about the use of the school day and looking at start times and how to sort of arrange the school day. So can each member of our group maybe pick one and provide a little more info about that?
Yes, about the start times. Trying to engage the students really early in the morning, kind of like 7:30 in the morning is a little difficult. Children around those times do not engage with the presentations and the learning that we have planned for them. So we were concerned about start times being just a little too early for the children. And part of the reasoning of that could have been limited transportation. And we have a number of students to pick up to take them to school on time.
I just shared that I had volunteered in the schools when I was working in Jersey City, New Jersey through my employer Fidelity, that we did some events and things. And then I had volunteered for Junior Achievement some years ago in the Wilmington area, just to get into the schools and engage the students and working with the different teachers and teachers' aides and things to improve the learning, throughout the day. So.
Carolyn spoke about a trip to Ellis Island that she helped with, and just the impact that had on students, what seems like very profound.
Right.
Awesome. Dr. Bakir?
John, why don't you go ahead and summarize my points?
Sure. So we talked a lot about violence in the community and the impact that has on children. It seems like some of what Markia was talking about with trauma and the impact that children who experience violence, see violence, carry with them into the classroom. And so the need to understand that's a reality for our students and be able to design systems that support them knowing that. And also something that I think Dr. Bakir said that really resonated with me was focusing on bringing about schools that families feel a lot of pride in talking about and give them lots of hope, and the need for this initiative to sort of reinvest in that, in bringing hope and bringing a real sense of community to each of these schools. So that was really, I think, an exciting and very impactful conversation, and I was very touched by a lot of the points that Dr. Bakir made. Mike and Josette, anything else you would add?
No, I think that was a great summary of the conversation.
Great.
All right, Jamie and Christine.
Sound like someone was about to speak. I couldn't tell who that was, but so thank you first of all to my group for the participation in the engaging conversation, and thank Dr. Aloysius for being my scribe so I could just talk. But we spent a lot or most of our time around the family and community kind of engagement and empowerment, both in engaging community members, engaging community-based organizations, but also the businesses around the community as well. And we spent some time around policy. I'm going to volunteer Ms. James to throw out some of her thoughts around the policies and her thoughts that could be impactful. So Ms. James, if you don't mind speaking to that piece.
For sure, I love to. All right, so we were talking about family and community involvement, and since we have DHSS, and we know some of our families, in order to get their services like food stamps, purchase of care, things of that nature, they need to do a certain amount of hours a week for a certain amount of time in order to continue to get those services. So what if we embed into that policy that they need to have a certain amount of hours in school engagement involvement? So one parent-teacher conference, you need to be able to sign off on that you went to a parent-teacher conference. That goes to your hours so you can continue to get services. Almost embed the importance back into the culture in the city. That way we can see student growth. So I think if we look into the policy and embed it into the policy and have it like, Mr. Simmons just said, embedded into our community, we will see student success, longevity.
Thank you, Ms. James. And then Ms. Elder, if I can volunteer you spoke to the concept of involving our community businesses, and not only the family supporting those businesses, but those businesses in some way supporting those schools. You want to speak to, I know the example you gave was around Adams 4, but you want to speak to that before the group as well?
Yes. We as a community group at the time was in the early 70s, I believe. And we went, it was Wick and Pack, and we went to the businesses, not just the corner stores, but all the businesses that was in our area. And we asked and we met with them, and we actually got them to agree to put money into the community, which in turn made us able to start the Adams Ford Shopping Center, and it employed people in the community. And they had an X amount of years, and I'm not really sure because it's been so long ago how many years of the agreement that they put back into the community. And not just the money went just to Adams Ford, but it went to servicing the community and helping the community. We had money for home repairs and all kinds of stuff, and we had money for children going to school, in college, tuition funds, anything that they needed. For those who didn't stay on campus, we helped those who didn't stay on campus. We helped with books, whatever supplies and stuff that they needed, so that money was utilized well. And it was successful, but they only had an X amount of time. And I don't have the blueprint on me, but I can get it. You know,
Fine.
because we're supporting these businesses, they should pour back into us.
So again, thank you. The other thing I was fortunate was to have a representation from a couple of our community-based organizations with Children and Families First and Strive / the warehouse. And we talked about a little bit about not only do we have these services, but that the services aren't off times, the information isn't off times, spread throughout the community, and then how can we work on that? And so we're going to schedule some time with me to get information and figure out how we can share that information. But both of those groups, and I'll give them a chance to speak, either Caroline or Ms. Faison, to speak about just that communication piece, but also the trust piece that's needed from those community-based organizations to the families and students to get them. So I don't know if Caroline or Ms. Desiree want to speak to that as well.
Caroline, you want to go first, or you just want me to comment?
I was going to let you go. Go ahead, Ms. Faison.
Okay. Well, I've been part of Children and Families First at Shirtledge Academy, Red Clay, for about 10 years. But I think in terms of community schools and Children and Families First existing in a lot of our schools that we're talking about for the collaborative plan, we are working with partnerships and we're sharing resources and we're making sure that we do outreach and attendance and things like that. But I think when Ms. James touched on the policy and practices that we can change and tying them to benefits, we'll have more success stories and sharing our resources. And the last conversation that we talked about was a lot of our families like that in-person connection first before you can get them to do anything else. So we need to try to continue on with, going door to door and making sure we do more outreach, because I think that connection is builds that trust in the community.
Absolutely. I represent Strive. Our office is out of the teen warehouse, so familiar with both ends, but definitely clear from the conversation that getting out to the people face to face, interacting with people beyond just social media outreach will really help. I'm excited to hear from everybody on this call, the need that is there, that I hope our social emotional learning curriculum and wonderful facilitators can start to close some of those gaps. So excited to be on and excited to continue to learn.
So again, I mentioned earlier, so thank you all for commenting, and I don't want to exclude anybody else that was in our group that may have some comment, including Christine, who may have had some notes as she was taking notes of something that we didn't touch on. So Christine, I'll give you the mic for a second before we turn it back over to John and the rest of the group.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. No, I really have 1 second. I was just checking the notes to make sure and everyone's covered them. I just think relationships, trust, and face-to-face were the themes throughout our entire conversation.
Okay, so thank you. John, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, this is really exciting that we have so many folks around the table here who are identifying needs and bringing certain services and expertise to the table. So did anyone want to ask questions of different groups, that what things that were brought up that you want to know more about or have suggestions on it? I don't want to cut us off too soon, so please feel free to jump in and ask any questions of the groups that presented here.
John, while people are thinking of that, can I just make an observation? And it's an observation that comes from many of these individual conversations I've had with parents and community members as we've knocked doors and in our town hall meetings. This issue of trust is incredibly important. And I think doing what we're doing this morning with our town hall meeting the other night, we're going to continuing to build that trust. I can hear it in some of the folks who've been engaged with us now for months. And their voices changing. I think we as a team need to keep focused on that, because we'll make progress on so many of these areas if we earn the trust of the folks whose children are entrusted into our care.
One thing that came out in our group that I forgot to mention, I apologize, is we just talked about engagement. Could it be limited by safety factors? And so we talked about schools being community hubs. And the example I gave was as a youngster playing in a basketball league at Bancroft, and why did that go away, or what barriers are there to prevent it? And across the board, everyone felt like we need to increase in safety. As if they go at 5 o'clock when it's light, they got to get home at 8 o'clock when it's dark. And so certainly the parameters around safety, whether it's lighting or other things that are happening in our community. But certainly I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that safety feature or that safety comment, given the fact that one of our goals is to have these schools return to that level of being community hubs as well. So.
I was just going to add, I don't have a question, but I would like for us to, as we're talking about the collaborative and envisioning it, to make sure that we're prioritizing the voice of the students that we're serving. I just always stress the students that we served 10 years ago are not the students that we're serving today. That they are very different. And so in Brandywine, we are really working to bring the voice of the student to the table, to hear their needs and collaborate with them around the solutions as well.
I 100% agree with you. And I think one of the most impactful conversations that sticks out to me is one that the governor and I had when we were knocking on doors with a sixth grader and hearing about his experiences as a student in the city and what has worked for him and what has not worked was so impactful. And he was able to, to articulate it in a really profound way. And so I agree, and please push us on that, but also help us by, many of you are in schools every day, and we would love to hear from your students. And so I really appreciate you raising that point and agree with you 100%. There's a question in the chat. Caroline, did you want to jump in and talk anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. My office is out of the teen warehouse, and safety as it being a community hub is definitely a factor. But I definitely think it would be valuable to have the safety involving and prioritizing the community. So are there employment opportunities to hire people of the community to lead that charge? Just kind of a thought.
Definitely, and just so folks know, everyone on our side, we're all taking copious notes about everything that's being raised here and talked about here. So I noted that, Caroline. I appreciate you raising it.
I just quickly mentioned, that was an excellent point, Ms. Davis, about the students' point of view. So I work at the Byard School. I would love to get feedback. I could easily get feedback from the students and give that information over to you guys as well, to get the students' perspective.
I just dropped my email in the chat. I would love to see those recommendations. That would be amazing, Andrea. Any other thoughts or suggestions or issues anyone wanted to raise here?
Hi, this is Miss Faison Desiree. Hi. Again, I wanted to even piggyback on what we're saying about students and families. I like to see more empowerment of recognizing the families that are already doing well in our schools and how much they're already involved and engaged. But I don't think we look at that and take a big picture on how many families are doing well and students are doing well in their schools that we're servicing.
John, if I may, that was something that came up in a big way the other night, is outreach, not just when things are not going well, but when things are going well, you know, and compliments, and that kind of boost can really help, you know, build that trust that we're talking about, as well as, you know, motivate even greater involvement by parents.
Absolutely. And I want to thank Desiree for the time out of her day yesterday to hop on a Zoom with me and share some feedback. I really appreciate her doing that and joining us again today. That's really wonderful. Other thoughts or comments or suggestions folks wanted to raise here? All right, well, I'll turn it over to the governor to close us out, but I just wanted to reiterate what he said at the beginning. We are at Harlan on Wednesday, the 9th. We'll be with Caroline in the Teen Warehouse on the 12th. We will be at Warner on the 21st. We will be at Wilmington Public Library on the 22nd, LACC on the 24th. All of that is at de.gov/WLC. So I hope to see some of you back for those conversations as well. Jim and I both put our email addresses in the chat. So please please go ahead and reach out to us and stay in touch with us. And Andrea, I will be anxiously awaiting the suggestions from your students at Bayard. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. So Governor, if you want to close us out.
Yeah, just a quick thank you to all of you for joining us this morning, taking some time out for what I think is the most important issue, certainly the most important thing that state government does, which is to provide for the education of our children and for a bright future. And we all know that we need to do a better job. I want to in particular thank the two board members from Christina who've joined us, Don Patton, who seems to come to all these. We appreciate Don's participation and his long experience. Dr. Pakir for joining us as well. And our team from DOE, thank you all for your great work. Daniel and Jim in particular for leading the breakouts the other night and today. We still have a lot of work to do, but most importantly, those of you who work on this issue every day, who know the children, who know the families, who know the communities, we need your support. We're going to continue to this outreach, the communication necessary to build a really strong foundation. And the trust. I think the foundation fundamentally is based on trust between, as Jim used to say, and I like to say, you know, too often we do things to people and not with people in education. I think that's the idea here. And I think there are important programmatic things that we can do, curricular things that we can do after school and extended day things that we can do. But fundamentally, if we develop trust with the community and with parents, our children are gonna have much greater success. So thanks for joining us, and we would encourage you to stay involved as we move forward.